On Woodworking with Wes today, we're going to build a little bookcase that only takes one sheet of plywood and one board of lumber. Let's show you what we're going to do. Okay, believe it or not, in just 5 minutes, we were able to cut out all of the panel parts. This is our back, this is our bottom shelf and the mid shelf. Here's our sides, and these are the stretchers that go across the top that we'll be using to anchor the actual top piece when we make it. I want to show you the material that we're using. It's a very special material that we're using for the very first time. Typically when I do a veneer piece of plywood, I use what they call gold ply. Gold ply has a pine ply core and 2 thin layers of MDF material, and that material has a veneer on both sides, and that makes the veneer really smooth. This material here is called composite core, and it is basically the exact same material as gold ply without the veneer on both sides. So this is very smooth, and we're just going to put a nice clean sand on it, and this becomes our paint grade surface. Now, a typical piece of plywood is 3/4 of an inch thick, and because this does not have the veneer on both sides, it's 11/16 thick. And so when you cut your materials and make your measurements, you have to take into account that it's 1/16 of an inch less than a standard 3/4 inch piece. With our panel pieces all cut, but before we assemble, we are going to give it a coat of paint before we assemble because it's easier to get into the corners and do a better paint job before you assemble. Now, if you don't have a paint shop and are not going to be spraying, you can do this same process with a paintbrush or a roller and still get your panel pieces covered with a coat of paint before you assemble, and that makes a better finish when you're all done. By the way, our mid shelf will have the core edge exposed, and so we put a 1/4 inch face on it, and we're sanding that so that it'll have a nice finished face. With our panel pieces in the paint shop, while it's drying, we're going to go ahead and cut out and make our face frame. Now, we had one large board that I showed you. I took a board that was the same size and I did some milling to thickness. We have milled down that original board to 3/4 inch stock, and we're making our face frame out of that. The top rail of our face frame has an arch to it. This is the top rail of our face frame. You can see we have already marked the arch, and I'm going to show you how we do that. We take a thin stick of some sort. This happens to be a ripping off of our plywood. You take it and you bend it. We made a mark in the center. We made a mark on both ends so that we knew where our ends were and where our center was. Turn this up like this, and then you bend your stick like this and then draw a line. Takes 2 people. I had my videographer help me. But anyway, that's how we created this line, and now we're going to take our jigsaw and cut to the line. With our face frame all cut out and checked for size, it's time to drill for pocket holes. We'll just use our Craig jig, clamp it to the bench, and it's just that simple. We'll go ahead and complete all the pocket holes and get ready to put it together. With our pocket holes all drilled, time to assemble. A little glue and clamp it to the bench, making sure that our measurement is correct there. Same on the other side. Okay, there's our face frame. With our sides and bottom painted, it's now time to assemble. And so what we're going to do, and I put a piece here as a spacer. Our back is going to go behind the bottom shelf, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And so we're going to use it as a spacer as we nail together. Now I marked a line on here. This is the space underneath the shelf. So the shelf sits on top of this line here, about here, because there's an 1.25 inch face to our face frame. So we put it like that, and we're just going to be nailing this together. That is the one nice thing about composite core material that we're using. It holds nails really well. If you wanted to put some screws in there, it also holds that. But it is a great material to put a box together because it holds your nails so well. Okay, so that one's in. And we'll do the same thing to the other side. We'll move this over here so it continues to use as a spacer. And again, putting our line at the bottom of our shelf, just like that. Okay, our bottom shelf is nailed into our sides. This is the top anchoring cleat. We're going to be screwing through this to anchor our top when we get to that point. And so we nail this in next. It's flush with the front and flush with the top. And again, just nails. And the nails we're using are 1.5 inch, 18 gauge brad nails. Both sides, same way. Okay, this is the back hanging cleat for the top, and it is going to be recessed the same distance as our floor, which is the thickness of our back. And so we're going to use just a little scrap piece here to use as a spacer, flush with the top. We're going to give it one nail on that side, and then we're going to go down here and get it positioned right where it needs to be. And like it, we use our little spacer stick here, and we're positioning the thickness of the back that's going to go in next. Right there. Sorry, my hands are all over in the way here. Okay, right there, flush with the top. Check us again. Okay, there we are. We'll give it one nail. Okay, we're good. We'll go ahead and finish nailing that in. We're getting ready to nail our back in now, so we'll turn it over, white side in, of course, and we'll lay it between our sides and on top of the floor that we just put down and our hanging cleat that we just nailed in. And so we'll start at one corner and work our way around, making sure that we're square and tight. And by doing that, we'll make our cabinet all square and tight. Okay, there we are on the top corner. We'll give it a couple of nails there. I'm going to go across the top of our hanging cleat and nail our hanging cleat in all the way across. Okay, with our cabinet all put together now, it's time to put the face frame on. And it goes on just like this, and because it's paint grade, we just face nail. So I'll turn it around to me, put some glue on, and away we go. And glasses so I can see. There we are. You don't need a lot of glue on putting a face frame. You just need enough that after the nails are in, the glue just makes sure that it's held. But you don't want a lot of squeeze out to make a mess. We bring our face frame flush with the bottom and centered on the sides. Feels like everything fits right where it's supposed to be. Okay, we'll finish nailing that on. After installing our face frame, we puttied the nail holes that we'll actually show. We have a corner that's going to hide the ones down the side, and we're going to show you that corner in a minute. But we'll sand out the whole cabinet and then come back with the corners. We've now sanded everything to 120, and we'll do the final sand to 150. Before we do, we're going to put a 1/4 inch round over on the inside of our face frame. Okay, I want to show you the corner that we're going to apply. Now, after having sanded our cabinet, we have made this corner. It fits over the top of our face frame in the corner of the cabinet and creates the foot that the actual bookcase will be standing on. I'm going to show you how I made this little corner and how it applies. I started off making this corner piece by milling my wood. Now this is still out of our one piece of wood, so we haven't gone beyond our one piece of wood. I milled it down to 3/8 of an inch thickness. This is 1 3/4 inches, and this piece is 1 3/8 inches to create a 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 corner when we nail it together. So the first thing we'll do is glue and nail this corner together like that. We're going to be using our 23 gauge brad headless pin gun to nail this together. We're just putting a small bead of glue down there. We want plenty of glue because that holds it together, but we don't want so much to make a mess. And so there we are with our glue, and we'll just make sure we're flush top and bottom because these are cut to length. The length is 32 inches. Our cabinet is 29.5 inches, and so that creates a little foot that is 2.5 inches high. And like I say, we're just going to make sure that our little corner comes together and nail it with these. And the little headless pins that I'm using are 3/4 of an inch long. Well, actually, they're 7/8 of an inch long. Excuse me, I used 7/8 one. Plenty of nail to use this, to nail this together. And we're just going to use plenty of pins up and down because this is paint grade. It's not going to show. And making sure that we held ourselves in good shape, we now have a nice tight corner up and down. After nailing our corner together, we have puttied it, so we're ready to sand. We're going to sand like we do everything else, 80, 120, and then 150 for our final sand. So this is 80 grit. Let's get started. With our corner sanded to 120, we are now going to take our handheld trim router with a 1/4 inch round over bit, and we're going to round over all 3 corners. This one, and this one. We'll now take 150 grit sandpaper and we'll sand the routes that we just put on so that they're nice and smooth. When we get down to the bottom edge here, we're going to sand this. We're also going to sand the bottom that goes against the floor, the bottom of our leg that goes against the floor, so it won't splinter. We'll go ahead and finish this out like this. And then we're going to final sand it with 150 grit, and our leg will be done. Okay, all done, and we'll complete the rest of them the same way. To install our corner piece, all we're going to do is put some glue on the inside like this, and we're going to use an 18 gauge 1 inch brad. We're going to make sure that it's flush with the top, and then we're going to kind of alternate our nails down like this, and we'll putty and sand those. The last thing we have to sand is the actual top. We went ahead and cut it to size, banded it with 1/2 inch solid material all the way around. Now we're going to sand it out. When we get done sanding, we'll put a 1/4 inch round over around the top of it, just like we've done to the other parts. Okay, our sanding is all complete. We're ready for paint shop. Let's talk a little bit about the finish that we put on here. We used a primer sealer for our color coat. We sprayed several coats. Now, again, like I talked about earlier, if you don't have a paint booth and can't spray, this certainly could have been done with a paintbrush and roller. And so painting is not a real big issue for something like this. You can use whatever is available to you. Check with your local paint provider for the materials that you'll want to use. After we got done, we sprayed a clear top coat over our primer to finish it off. And now we have our finished bookcase and it looks great. We hope you liked our little bookcase that we did together. And let's do another project together next time on Woodworking with Wes.